Accusations of the U.S. hijacking medical supplies destined for other countries have become public knowledge in recent days, forcing the White House to issue a denial. This is a difficult time for the entire world, with no country spared of the danger of COVID-19. But does this incident suggest America first over humanitarianism in U.S. decision-making? If so, is that an understandable natural reaction or a cause for global concern? Faced with shortages caused by the pandemic, how do we navigate these issues collectively? I'm joined on the phone by Mr. Zhao in Beijing, a research fellow with the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Welcome, Zhao. First of all, some basic facts we have to make it clear. I think the first accusation of American piracy came out of this German minister, or reports of this German minister last Friday, which said that the Interior Minister for Berlin State, Andreas Giesel, he accused the U.S. of being a modern pirate after the latter reportedly diverted a shipment of masks intended for Germany and outbid other countries for critical medical supplies. So Mr. Giesel actually stepped back. He said no American firm was involved in the mix-up, and the company that was involved, the 3M, also denied diverting any shipment and said that they had never received an order from the German city. The White House also denied any involvement, and yet we have also seen reports from other countries, for instance, from France, where they were talking about their masks being hijacked on the tarmac by American buyers who were offering 3 to 4 times the amount of price and just kind of shifted away like that. And then the government of Canada also promised to investigate similar claims from Canadian buyers, and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he would tell Trump that both countries are interlinked in ways that would hurt the nations if supply chains were cut. So, Mr. Zhao, how much credibility can we give to these allegations of American first or modern piracy in terms of the hunt for medical masks? Are they completely just allegations or not? And why are we seeing quite a number of them all of a sudden?
Well, for this particular case, we don't see any real evidence that there's an act of so-called piracy. And I think to use this modern pirate verse is actually a sort of exaggeration of the act. However, that being said, I think there's a general confusion and panic in the medical supply market. And that's understandable because in the early stage of coronavirus in China, there's also some sort of mixed up and also people going out there and grabbing medical supplies when they are indeed have urgency of need of those medical supplies. But then I think that's a reflection of two things. First, is there's a general fear of shortage among not only government agencies, but also private companies and persons. So people are going out there to do whatever they can to get whatever supplies in the market. That is beating the price up and making the supplies really in shortage and also in disorder. And secondly, there's a market failure in this particular case, because without government management, without global coordination, there's people just going around there in the market searching for medical supplies, and whoever pays the highest price will get those, no matter where they can get it. And in this competition, governments, particularly local governments, usually lag behind because they only have limited resource and no cash on hand to buy those medical supplies. So I think those kind of things causing these many incidents that cannot be verified, but still we know it's existing in there.
Well, definitely the Canadian case is relatively factual, because we have seen the Canadian side coming out very strongly, including a very strong rebuttal from a local leader saying it is not a time to stop being human. Basically, they also recalled what what Canada was doing to help the United States in the aftermath of the 9/11 incident. So in that case, it seems that it was not just an allegation. Mr. Zhao.
Yeah, I think the 3M case is very much the case that we can verify and prove that's something that the U.S. is overreacting, because the 3M is a company producing masks and also other medical supplies. They have factories within the United States and outside the United States. normally they would import those medical supplies back to the U.S. And in this case, 3M is supplying globally. And many buyers are from Southeast Asia, for instance, when they produce them in China and other sites in Southeast Asia and then export to those medical hospitals and people. But then, I mean, the U.S. government is going out grabbing those supplies and try to divert them back to the United States. And I think that's a wrong way to go about it, because that's going to cause humanitarian crisis outside of the U.S.
Right. I'm also joined from Paris via Skype by Professor Douglas Yates, Professor of Politics at the American Graduate School in Paris. Douglas Yates, thank you so much for joining us and taking time to help us understand the situation. So we were talking about the company 3M, actually a latest tweet by President Trump on the reported deal that was struck between President Trump and the face mask manufacturer 3M. And the tweet says, "We hit 3M hard today after seeing what they were doing with their masks. P Act, meaning the Defense Production Act, all the way. Big surprise to many in government as to what they were doing. We'll have a big price to pay." And Mr. Yates, how do you look at the deal that was reportedly being struck and the pressure that President Trump was exerting on 3M, which is a private company producing masks and have an obligation to supply these masks to countries around the world, and having to cave in to the pressure under President Trump?
Yeah, it's nothing short of a tragedy. In response to the question of whether the United States is a pirate, it's so important to distinguish President Trump and the masthead of American government from the United States. Clearly, President Trump is acting like a pirate. Imagine if President Obama was in office, how he would have acted, how he would have gotten together with allies, how he would have made collective decisions to try to coordinate, arrange, cooperate internationally. We wouldn't have this kind of nonsense. But President Trump is one of the most ineffective American presidents we've had in the 20th century. He has no friends. He really has no skills. He's not much of a manager, has a very short-term memory, and he doesn't know much about the international system. And as a result, he's only speaking to his base, to 30, 40 million Republicans in a world of 7 billion people. And he's a spoiler. He's really hurting international cooperation. If Obama had been president, there would be right now coordination with China, with Europe, with allies in Africa, in Latin America. And what we've got is a beggar thy neighbor policy. And as if we could protect ourselves as a country, anybody who gets sick with this virus is a potential carrier of this virus. And wherever this virus propagates, it's a threat to Americans. Right. And it's truly a sad moment.
Yeah. Well, we actually really heard something that's, I think is definitely not presidential, not American, not showing any leadership, because President Trump openly stated that this was, that the White House ordered 3M to prioritize U.S. orders and stop exporting masks to Canada and Latin America. He said, we need the masks. We don't want others getting it. That's why we are instituting a lot of Defense Production Act. You could call it a retaliation, because that's what it is. It's a retaliation. If people do not give us what we need for our people, we are going to be very tough. Professor Yates, some people are saying, well, when Americans are dying in large numbers, shouldn't people prioritize the most dire need at this moment? How do you react to that kind of rationale?
Well, we're all in this together. And the way that we've eliminated pandemic viruses like smallpox and measles and the guinea worm is by cooperating. We need everyone to cooperate to stamp out the COVID virus. It can't be done nation by nation, city by city, county by county. And the lack of preparedness means that we need to share resources at the places where the pandemic is hitting hardest. And then once the curve flattens, move those resources to the next place. And this idea that there's a national boundary is bad thinking, and it shows the blindness of the Trump administration to America's role in the world.
So you are sitting in Paris, Professor Yates. What is the perception of how this U.S. administration has been handling the crisis vis-a-vis its relationship with its allies across the Atlantic over where you are?
Well, there had been a pirating, to use the metaphor, of a shipment of masks that was sent from China to France. And so a week ago, many French were complaining. There's conspiratorial theories that are flying around the internet because everyone now is mediating their world through the internet. And these conspiratorial theories blame the Trumps or the Clintons. There's a feeling also in France among my students, many of whom love America and love American culture. They say, we feel so sorry for you. And what they mean is they're sorry because they understand that the ship of state has been hijacked by pirates. That it's not America that's the pirate, but terrorists have taken over the ship. And they're running it much the way pirates would. There's a great sadness among people who love America in France to see what our country is doing with this sociopathic buffoon.
It is not a nice sign. I mean, as much as China is seen as a competitor, even for China, this bodes not well. We're all in this together, yeah. Many thanks to Professor Douglas Yates joining us from Paris, and many thanks to Zhao having been with us on the phone.